Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We've got Kroq and his Shaggoth buddy here today leading my Warriors of Chaos. We're going to be fighting up against the Lizardmen, which is a very lore-appropriate and fun matchup. Lots of big monsters, heavy hitters, so let's start in with the army compositions. Of course, I've got Kroq in charge here. He's got Star Crusher and Lord of the Storm, as well as Standard Die. We've got a Chaos Sorcerer Lore of Metal, which is decent against the Beastmen. He's got Plague of Rust, which is a really nice single-target armor debuff, as well as Transmutation of Lead, which is a great area of effect, attack debuff. Both very solid picks. Of course, another Dragon Ogre Shaggoth here. For the Infantry Core, we've got 2 Marauder Meat Shields up front, backed up by 4 Chaos Warriors with Halberds. Very cost-effective unit against the Dinos. They'll fare decently against Saurus. They will lose one-on-one. However, they have armor-piercing, anti-large, will trade well against Dinos, will trade well against Saurus, and, just all around a very good toolkit unit in this matchup. On each flank, we've got 1 Forsaken, just for some fast attack, and as well as some flanking, getting a nice rear charge or getting on Chameleon Skinks, regular Skinks, and a kind of squishier infantry unit. These guys are going to be very good against. As well, Vanguard deployed on each hill. We've got 1 unit of Marauders with throwing axes. These Marauder Horsemen throwing axes. Very good pick here. Any armor-piercing missiles that are highly mobile are going to be an absolute nuisance for the Dinos to deal with, just because they don't have a lot of units that can, well, don't have any units that can catch light cavalry. So you'll be able to, if you micro well, if you stay away from, Chameleon Skirmishers, Chameleon Skinks, regular Skinks, and so on, you'll be able to get some really nice armor-piercing missiles in on Saurus, on Dinos, what have you. Any of that stuff is good targets, so very, very good pick here. For my opponent's army, he's got a Saurus Oldblood up on a Carnosaur, which is a decent pick. I'd have liked to have seen, Kroq-Gar here, but the Saurus Oldblood does a lot of what Kroq-Gar can do for a little bit cheaper. He's also got a Skink Priest Lore of Beasts up on the, is this an Ancient Stegodon? Let's see. Believe it's just a regular Stegodon, because it does have the increased range there. Yep. So it's the Stegodon with the Bolt Thrower. Cheaper option, has greater range, but it doesn't do quite as much missile damage. But very good stuff. In terms of spells, he's got Pan's Pelt, Flock of Doom, and Wyson's Wild Form. All very good picks. Looks like also Transformation of Kadon. Or no, Curse of Anraher. That's interesting. I'm not sure I agree with that pick 100%, but, it could be potentially useful against, say, these Marauders with throwing axes, but very interesting. His core is Saurus Spears, Saurus Warriors, Saurus Spears out on the flanks, unit of Temple Guard here in the back for support, Skink Skirmishers up front, and 1 Feral Cold One on each flank. So, interesting army. We'll go over kind of what I think of the build towards the end, but it's got some decent pieces to it. First matter of business for me is going to be to get my Marauders with throwing axes and just attack these Feral Cold Ones, and this is exactly what I want, is for my opponent to give chase. In this case, where they're able to get their charge animation, they are going to catch a couple of these Marauder Horsemen. You can see this guy getting caught and surrounded by Dinos. He's definitely not long for this world, same with this guy, but for the most part they're going to be able to get away and just use their armor-piercing missiles to do damage from a distance. And if I can do enough damage to them to make them enraged, then my opponent will no longer be able to pull away and pull back to the fight where he needs them, and I can just perpetually kite them around with the Marauder Horsemen and just wear them down. Granted, that's not 100% cost-effective, just because the the Feral Cold Ones are somewhat cheaper than the Marauders with throwing axes, but even keeping them away from the fight for an extended duration is going to be very, very nice. Of course, if they don't get any work done whatsoever, that's basically negating the cost. So it definitely works out. We're just bringing up the main line here. Going to be using the Marauders out front to screen some of these missiles and just kind of break the charge a little bit. But you can see they're going to be a wild clash in here. Kroq will definitely be able to put a beating on the Skink Priest with the Lore of Beasts there. Oh man, that Bolt Thrower just got a nice shot there. But Kroq's going to immediately charge in. And none of these Saurus Warriors have shields, which is really interesting. I prefer the shielded variants just because they have better melee defense. They're a little bit tankier, and in case you do see missiles, which in this matchup I definitely think you will, it's definitely good to have them. You can see the Shaggoth fighting up against the Saurus Oldblood here, and the Shaggoth is going to do very, very well here. It's a pretty nice trade for me. I'm not 100% sure of the cost, but you can see Lord of the Storm going off here, and Kolek starting to put an absolute beat down on the Skink Priest Lord of Beasts. Granted, Kolek is somewhat saturated on these Temple Guards, which is a bit rough for him, but the Saurus Spears on the flanks are not going to be able to hold up to the Chaos Warriors with Halberds. I'm also able to get around the back with these Marauder Horsemen and deal with these Skink Skirmishers. The standard Skink Skirmishers don't have poison attacks like the Chameleon Skinks do, so I will be able to win that melee engagement. And the Saurus, while they will perform admirably here, they're not going to be able to hold up, you know, if their leadership goes down. And at this point, this Saurus Old Blood is back here attacking these Marauders, which is really not the target he wants. Looks like my Shaggoth may have lost his attack order there, but we're going to get it re-engaged very, very shortly. Charging into the back of these Halberds, I believe just trying to get a terror route, but, you know, unfortunately the Halberds will turn around and start to do a considerable amount of damage, and you can see the Shaggoth has got his sights set on the Old Blood here, going to be coming in and doing some nice damage. Man, Shaggoths versus Carnosaurs is kind of like the Clash of Titans in a way, like the ultimate anti-large armor-piercing monster. It's just battling it out. Bringing the Skink Priest on this Stegodon is a bit of a risk, just because Shaggoths are going to be a very common pick in this matchup. They're really, really good against the dinos, and you know, the Skink Priest will definitely lose out. Where my opponent was saturated in with those Temple Guards, he was winning momentarily. He's going to come in, but I'm getting this Saurus Old Blood now from both sides here with the Shaggoth and Kolek, so he's not long for this world. And then once he's out of the picture, then, yep, you can see him getting taken down there. Now we're going to be able to turn our sights onto the Stegodon here, and it's going to be pretty much GG from that point on for the Lizardmen, unfortunately. These Saurus Spears holding admirably, but just not able to hold their leadership together after their general goes down, and getting inundated and surrounded in many cases. We've got this Forsaken around the flanks over here, and the Marauder Horsemen have done a great job after leading those Feral Cold Ones on a wild goose chase. We're able to come in kind of the second part of the battle, occupy these Skink Skirmishers. A lot of the times they weren't able to fire on my Shaggoths, and, you know, just definitely worked out for me in the end. It's a rough matchup, I think, for the Lizardmen. In my preference, I would have liked to have seen Kroq-Gar here, just because he's better. He has better combat stats. He can bring Hand of the Gods. You know, just overall is a better combatant. He'll still lose one-on-one to Kolek, but, you know, if you can screen him out with other units, possibly pop in you know, Cold-Blooded, then he can heal and come back in the fight and then beat Kolek. My build, you know, we can actually take a look at another replay here, and let me show you the build I like to bring against Chaos. Granted, in this replay, my opponent didn't bring Shaggoths, but it's still worth looking at, I think, just because I wanted to show you the build I'm kind of experimenting with against Chaos. You guys will have to let me know what you think. But I do indeed have Kroq-Gar up on Grimlock, just as my general, just because he's, like I was saying, he's got a little bit better combat stats than the Old Blood. We've got our Skink Priest Lord of Heavens on the ground. Of course, the Midnight Wind is really good against Chaos because, of course, it pulls away armor, which will help Saurus Warriors trade more effectively against Chaos Warriors. It also has some other really nice toolkit spells. In this, guys, I've just brought the Uranin's Thunderbolt, which is a very nice tight area of effect. It does really good armor-piercing damage, especially if you overcast it, and just good against a lot of different targets. I also brought the Roiling Skies because I figured you might see a Manticore champion on a Manticore or a Feral Manticore in this matchup, so it's not too expensive to bring this lore attribute, and I had extra money, so I figured why not. I've also got a Revivification Crystal to heal things up, in addition to a Saurus Scar Veteran. So this gives you basically, you'll see double Shaggoths a lot in this build, in this patch rather, with the build I just showed you. So this is kind of the counter build to that. You've got Kroq-Gar and you've got the Saurus Scar Veteran, so you're able to respond to a lot of different threats. Two very, very strong armor-piercing anti-large monsters that cause fear and terror. It's going to be very strong. The Scar Veteran also has Cold-Blooded and isn't as liable to rampage as, say, the Feral Carnosaur, so definitely worth the extra cost. In terms of other units, we've got some Skinks mixed in with Kroq-Gars. Kroq-Gars do excellent armor-piercing damage. They're very heavily armored, great leadership. They deal anti-infantry as well. They're a bit slow, but you know, very powerful unit. We've also got Saurus Spears with shields. just because, again, the shields give them better melee defense and missile block chance, and you know, the spears are meant for Shaggoths since they are you know, a common pick in this matchup. But even with the spears, these guys still do have a base 12 armor piercing damage, you know, 42 total weapon strength, which is decent. That's actually really good. So, I mean, with the bonus versus large applied, it's going to be excellent against large troops, and they'll trade okay. They're not as good as the regular Saurus warriors against, you know, things like Chaos warriors, but they'll definitely trade okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this build. We've also got a couple of skink cohorts with javelins mixed in with regular skink cohorts because I had some extra funds. And yeah, for my opponent's build in this match, he's got a Chaos Sorcerer Lore of Death on a Chaos Dragon. The Chaos Dragons are very strong, but in this specific matchup I would much rather take Kroq-Gar. But, you know, the Chaos Dragon definitely has a lot going for it. It's got the breath attack, you know, it can carry a Sorcerer as well, so you could potentially get Fate of Buna, which you can see my opponent has dropped on these Saurus Spears, which is a bit of an odd pick. These guys aren't that expensive, and I'm just going to be able to easily counter with the Revivification Crystal to heal back a lot of that damage. So, you know, it's not the best use of it, but still going to do quite a bit of damage. He's also got a Exalted Hero on a Manticore, Chaos Warriors with Halberds, which is a strong pick, Chaos Marauders with great weapons, which personally I like the regular cheaper Marauders just because, number one, they're cheaper, and you know, the shields let you screen missile fire of skinks and so on, but the great weapons do have armor piercing, so they'll be potentially better against the dinos. The issue with Marauders is they're pretty easy to terror route, and so they're really not going to stick around to do much armor piercing damage anyway, hence why I like to go cheaper. He's also got some Chaos Trolls, Armored Chaos Trolls, which is an interesting pick in this matchup. I might have to tinker around a little bit with this, but they do great armor piercing damage. They hit really, really hard now. They got more unit models as well, and you know, 110 armor. The issue with these guys is they're extremely poor leadership. It's really going to, you know, make them suffer in this matchup. But let's go ahead and kick things off here. It's going to be a relatively quick battle, so you guys can probably guess it might be a little bit one-sided, but just wanted to kind of show you the build in action. And one nice thing about engaging on these maps with a lot of swampy terrain is, although the skinks are about to get bowled over by trolls, and you know, they'll pretty much lose regardless, but they're going to get the aquatic bonus here when they're fighting up against, let's say, the Marauders, so that's going to be great for them. You can see the Kroq-Gars now charging in here. We're going to get them engaged on the Armored Chaos Trolls. Although these Chaos Warriors with Halberds are mixed in here, they're going to be good against the Kroq-Gars. They'll still be able to do quite a bit of damage. We're now bringing in Kroq-Gar here. Since my opponents didn't want to land, I figured, hey, let's just go after some of these trolls. Let's see if maybe we can terror out away some of these Chaos Warriors. And we are going to hopefully be able to do just that. You can see Curse the Midnight Wind going off. Going to help these Saurus and Skinks cut through, you know, the Chaos Warriors and these Armored Chaos Trolls a little bit more effectively. On this flank, this unit of Chaos Marauders, you can see getting terrified away immediately. The Sorcerer has been using some breath attacks, but, you know, has done some decent damage, but he's also taken quite a few javelins as well, and some miscast damage. So, you can see my opponent, some Chaos Knights with lances that I failed to spot earlier, are going to come in here and get a pretty decent charge. They'll do quite a bit of damage, you know, in shock value, especially on these skinks. But, you know, the Saurus and the Kroq-Gars will be able to hold up fairly well. You can see another Fate of Buna going off on this unit of Saurus Warriors with shields here. Probably honestly should be saving that and just continuously Spirit Leeching Kroq-Gar. But let's see, did my opponent even bring Spirit Leech? Yes, he did. So personally I would have liked to have seen, because I don't have a lot of really high value infantry, the Saurus will, you know, they'll trade pretty decently, but I believe the Saurus Spears would actually lose to Halberds. But, you know, it's an interesting play. Kroq-Gar has taken quite a bit of damage here, but we've been able to deal a ton of damage as soon as that Chaos Sorcerer came down. He was, you know, right on top of Kroq-Gar and just took a ton of shock damage. This Exalted Hero is also on the ground here, and he's in the wrong neighborhood, as they like to say, and going to get stomped on by Kroq-Gar here. And this the Scar Veteran as well, yeah, he's pretty much going to immediately disappear from the battlefield. And with that, the Chaos Forces will pretty much all rout, so a quick and easy battle, but just wanted to show you that build in action. Again, my opponent didn't bring the best build. No Shaggoths, you know, it's a little bit questionable, but there are some things I like here. Of course, the Chaos Warriors with Halberds are really nice. Chaos Trolls, you know, the issue here is they're going to face a lot of terror-causing units, and because of their poor leadership, they're really going to struggle to stay in the fight, so I'm not sure I like them. I might have to play around with them a little bit in this matchup, but I'm not super sold on it. I'd have to try it out myself. But the Dragons, you know, interesting pick, but I do think you want to just take the spend on the Shaggoths and bring Kroq and a Shaggoth, or maybe some units of Dragon Ogres. All of the above are really good against the Dinos. So, not too much to talk about in terms of the army breakdown, but let me know your thoughts. What kind of builds you like to use in the Chaos versus Lizardmen matchup? If you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Mortal Empires content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.